Hello, everyone. I am Ben Johnson, and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. Perpetual Chess is a weekly interview show where top chess players, authors, content creators, and accomplished amateurs discuss their careers and share stories and chess improvement tips. Perpetual Chess is a part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, and we'd like to give special thanks to our presenting chess education sponsor, Chessable.com. For more information about the show, you can go to perpetualchesspod.com. But without further ado, let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. Just two very quick announcements before we get you to the fascinating interview with the always insightful top trainer and author Grandmaster Jacob Aagaard. Number one, this was recorded before the Sinkfield Cup in those innocent days before the chess world went crazy. So Grandmaster Aagaard has tons of insights about lots of topics, but we did not discuss the Magnus Hans Niemann controversy. You'll have to listen to other pods or consume the rest of the chess internet to get that. I did want to mention Grandmaster Aagaard wrote a blog post about his experiences with Hans Niemann in the early days of that controversy, and I'll link to that if you would like to read it. And I also wanted to remind you guys, please subscribe to the free email news list, the Perpetual Chess Link Fest, to help you all keep up with all that stuff. I'm putting a lot of work into this, tracking links and then sending them out every Friday. And all I ask for in return is to see that little number of subscribers go up. So please sub if you are interested, and tell your friends if you think they'd find it helpful. All right, let's get you to a great interview with Grandmaster Aagaard. Here it is. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We are joined by a favorite return guest and author. He is a multi-award-winning author, a trainer, a rejuvenated OTB chess player. His newest book, A Matter of Endgame Technique, is nearly 900 pages long, but it did just go to a second printing due to popular demand. At least one person read the whole book. That is me. And as always, the book is highly readable. Lots to learn from it, packed with information. You would be surprised how many instructive mistakes one can spot, even from Grandmaster games. So excited to discuss the book and all the other happenings in the chess world, which are immense. So let's welcome Grandmaster Jacob Aagaard back to the show. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, excited to catch up. There is just so much to talk about, Jacob. And I've been, we've been knowing we'd be doing this interview for a few months now. It's taken me more than a month to read your book just to get ready. And meanwhile, the news just keeps coming. The Olympiad, as we record this today, Agassi just won the Abu Dhabi, one of the strongest open tournaments of the year. We're recording this Thursday, August 25th. This actually won't be out for a few weeks. And prior to that, of course, Gukesh dominated the Olympiad. And this all jibes with something you've been saying on your Facebook page. You had a quote that I flagged way back on June 21st, which is, you said, I looked up results from the Indian Under-14 Championship. Click on the link and be shocked. There's a tidal wave coming in chess like nothing seen before in history. It can, of course, be attributed to Viswanathan Anand making chess popular in India and to the great respect intellectualism has in Indian culture. But to me, the great hero is Sir Bharat Singh, perhaps the most important chess personality on the 21st century. So, Jacob, I give the floor to you to just talk about what you've seen from young Indian players and, as you mentioned in this post, what you attribute this huge ascension.
Okay, I can tell you about the origin of this post here, because it's sort of a little bit of a sequel of some. So first I had seen some tournament somewhere, and I don't remember where. People can go back in my Facebook feed and find it if they're very interested, around April. And I saw this player, Untitled 2000 rated player from India, rated around 2000, was sharing the top positions with IMs and GMs in this open, which I don't remember which one. It was not a famous one. And he had 4.5 out of 6. So I just clicked on see his results. So in the first round, he had lost to a 1500 rated Indian. Then there was some draw very early on, and then he made it to 2.5 out of 4. Then he beat a GM and beat an IM. And then he was, up there and joined third, I think, with 4.5 out of 6. And I sort of you just take a photo of it and thought it was just funny and so on. And then, like a month later, I was like, I never got back to see what actually happened in that tournament. So I tried to find the tournament first. It totally failed. old dad and technology and these kind of things. And I then went back on my Facebook thread. I found him. I couldn't find the tournament still. I went to FIDE to find the tournament using his name. And then when I was there, I got distracted because I saw, Indian under 14. How did he do there? And I clicked on that. And this kid, because I had actually told the GM he had beaten was a Vietnamese GM. And the girlfriend of this GM is a member of our academy. And she had said, no, he played really well and so on. And I clicked on this under 14 championship. This very promising kid had played, and he got totally killed. So it's just like you have no idea what's happening. It's like, when I first traveled India, there were two shocking experiences for me. The second one will take first because it's just a standalone thing. We were in Calcutta, and there was this guy who had organized the talk and the training and so on I was doing in Calcutta. He was saying, at the moment he's trying to bring chess to all the schools of Bengal. I said, is there a lot of schools? No, just 10,000.
Right.
And I was thinking, I don't think there's 10,000 schools in Scotland. I'm not sure there's 2,000 schools in Scotland. Is there 1,000? Maybe. It's sort of like at the cusp, right? And it just blew my mind. But the first story was even more absurd. So it's a really nice guy from Ahmedabad, which is a small Indian town you probably never heard of only 5 million people. This is where Modi, the prime minister, is from. And so anyway, one evening we were at his parents' house. Ankit Dalal is the guy. And he'll say, I'm organizing now a state championship of Gujarat. I said, that's nice, and so on. So, we have a lot of qualification tournaments all the way out in the villages and so on. How many play in that? 100,000.
Oh, wow.
That was like me. And he said, no, but some of them, they don't really know the rules, and it's in the villages. I'm like, 100,000. So the next year, he got this fantastic idea of, Indians are not rich. Like the monthly average salary is like a few $100s. And he got this idea of organizing trips for Indian kids to go and play in Spain. So they would travel together as a big group. They would play 3 tournaments, and then they would go home. And I think he brought something like 60, 70 kids to Spain, and they played 3 tournaments. And they came home with something like 10,000 rating points.
I believe it.
10,000 rating points just left Europe to India. And you go to India and you see these tournaments, and they're like all 1,400, and they know the theory, and they are really, really good because there's such an influx of players, and they're really competitive, and they're really trying, and everyone sort of has a belief that they're the new Anand or the new Vidit or the new Irigasi or something like that. And they're really, really fighting. And then some people like Ramesh, for example, when his students were ready, they never played in India again. They go to Europe and they just become instant grandmasters. They go from 2,100 to instant grandmasters when they're ready. And what's happening now is more and more of these Indian kids are going to tournaments. And they are killing it. And next year I'll be 50. I'll play only senior tournaments, and I will never play them. And it's young guys like you who have to suffer, and I will just sit there and say, "Told you so."
Nice of you to put me in the young category. I've only got a handful of years myself, but it's
if only it was me.
But it is amazing, and obviously it starts at the top. I mean, we've had these recent dominant performances by Gukesh and Irigasi. So
Pragnananda in the FX Cup.
Yeah, exactly. So if we were to fast forward, say 10 years, Jacob, what percent, how many of the top 20 do you think will be from India?
So that's... I normally consider the top 5 to be the first 10 players. I know that sounds weird, but there's this circling all the time. And the same thing, top 20 for me is actually, the question is who's number 11 and who's number 30?
Yeah.
So, well, it's one of the waves coming, but I'm sure that you haven't missed that there's also an Iranian wave, and there's also an Uzbeki wave.
Yeah.
So the Indian is bigger because it's such a huge population behind it, and because Bharat is traveling around and making things happen all the time, helping, trying to put this extra stuff in. He's the guy who, with 4 months' notice or 5 months' notice, found $12.5 million and organized an Olympiad. And some people who went there didn't really like it. Other people say it's the best Olympiad they ever went to out of 10. Whatever it is, it was very last minute, and it was a real tournament, and it was massive, and it was great. And if you imagine that is what he does all the time in India, then you can see that this is not. He is affected this, but there's also lots and lots of other people who are equally pushing and trying to create it. So, top 20, let's say 8.
8? Okay. I would have guessed higher based on what you've said, but yeah, we've got to make.
No, but you know, there will always be like this individual from somewhere else. We should not totally write off Russians.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, Ukraine currently doesn't have any players really in the top, but this is an outlier. And you could also say, what about young Armenians, young Azeris? They could also be coming through. A more interesting question is probably how many players in top 20 will be over the age of 35.
Yeah,
I think for once it's going to be not many. But you follow my things on Facebook, so you've probably seen that actually at the moment the average age of top 25 is higher than it normally is.
Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, it's at the moment it's 32. It used to be around between 30 and 31 it was very stable for a long time, but it's actually grown because you get these waves of generations, new generation coming. There was one with Kramnik and Topalov and Shirov and Loche at the same time, and they lasted for a very long time. And now we have the 1990 generation. We have Nepomniachtchi, we have Kayakin, we have Carlsen, Sam is 91, and there are other players from around that age will be hanging for around time. But it's sort of, if anything's random, it will come in clusters. Otherwise, it's evenly laid out, But randoms comes in clusters. And now we have a big cluster coming, and it's really big.
Yeah, and obviously, it seems like all these young phenoms are taking turns making headlines. You're really up on their games. You discuss a few of the players as their games come up in the book. But I tried to get an answer from Fabiano, who I interviewed yesterday, Jacob. Is there any one player you would tap as most likely to be future world champion out of all these young upstarts?
Well, there's two.
We'll out two.
There's two, and I'm happy to choose one of them. So it's Gukesh and it's Abdussatorov. And it was beautiful that the Olympiad was decided in a game between the two of them.
Yeah, slugfest.
Oh, yeah. It was, at the moment, Gukesh seems like he's stronger. But what we saw in that game and what we've seen from Abdussatorov, also in the Rapid World Championship, where he was worse in quite a few games, is that he is such a competitor. And this is one of, for Killer Chess Training, I write these little essays sometimes. We send out as newsletters. Just, we want to say, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this one played a tournament. And then we sort of want to give people an inspiration to actually open the email and read these notifications. So I write these little essays, and one of them that's coming down the line is about predators. And it was not inspired by it, but I immediately recognized when I was talking about it with a student that it's the Carlsen thing, be a shark.
Right.
He said about Nepomniachtchi, which is what is a predator? Like I know you're in love with my dog Lucy. She is a predator. She is a wolf in sheep's clothing, really. Yeah. She's so sweet and tender and so on. And then she goes and kills some little animal and eats it and comes back and smiles. And there's no feeling of regret or anything. She just kills, eats, and devours. And it just doesn't change her relations with the world. This is natural. And this is what Carlsen is. Like, Carlsen is such a great player in so many ways. And sort of what feels like is happening at the moment is he's getting a little bit mild, maybe. But what has been characteristic with him so many times is that he is a total predator. And if you take Kasparov, this is also what he was. The natural order here, the food chain is I eat you, and you have no right to complain about it.
Right.
And you when you resist, it's an insult. So this is what I see with Abdussatorov. Gukesh is an amazing player, and he's also younger by, I think, more than a year even. So.
Yeah, and comes across as very pleasant-mannered, but he did an interview with Levy Rozman recently where he did say after that game against Abdussatorov, which for listeners who aren't familiar with it, Gukesh was in the driver's seat. He was still undefeated at the time, seemed to have things totally under control, but Abdussatorov just kept the game going. Suddenly they're in an imbalanced but equal position, and then Gukesh just wore down and made a mistake. But anyway, he said that he broke something after that game. He was so upset that he lost. But you had something to say, Jacob?
Yeah, I definitely have something to say because you said something there that hurt my soul.
Uh-oh.
Okay, because what happened recently in chess, like one of the biggest development, and you should do a podcast with correspondence players or computer programmers who knows much more about this than I do. I only can see it in the result. Stockfish 15 is exceptional. The step from 14 to 15 is beyond belief. And it might have single-handedly ended correspondence chess. But what it also does is it creates a mirage where a position that is objectively drawn through best play is suddenly considered equal. It says 0.00 equal, and it is a mirage. No, what it means is the computer can see so deeply that it says you do not win. But what happened in the Gukesh-Abdussatorov game was out of the opening, Abdussatorov was very slightly better at some point. If you want to look it up, anyone, it's like 16, move 16, you can play knight c3. I analyzed it, but there's also good analysis on chess.com of this game, so you don't have to beg for my analysis. But then instead they went to a sort of equal position, and then Abdussatorov made some positional mistakes, and he ended up with a weak c-pawn that eventually he lost. There was one point where Gukesh could have won in one move on move 28. But anyway, so he loses the c-pawn, and they have an endgame with queen and knight against queen and bishop. And Gukesh struggles to find the plan, and Abdussatorov just keeps it going so that he doesn't have to, there's no win that can be calculated. There's no direct win. It's just like he has to actually win the game. And what I think really, really upset Gukesh was that, and I listened to Levy Rozman's interview as well, was that by move 45, he played move king b2, and then after that, it was actually defensible for black. Before then, it was not. And then by this point, Praggnanandhaa was on the way to winning. Praggnanandhaa on board 3.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Was on the way to winning, and the two other games had already been drawn. So they are on the way to winning the Olympiad with winning with winning with Prague, and Gukesh making a draw. There was still some technical difficulties for Prague. He was struggling a little bit. But Gukesh, he sort of couldn't get himself to not play for a win. The position is quite winning still, just before it. But then we get into the man in the casino trying to win his money back, because he cannot let go of he was so winning, rather than let's just wrap this up, win the Olympiad, and nobody will remember. And there is some sort of romanticism, sort of, which I have, and maybe you have, and most people have. There's a humanity. He's not a stone cold killer. He's not a shark. And what happened then is they get into a much more complicated version of this endgame. Both of them have passed pawns, and at some points there are draws for white. And in the end, Gukesh blunders a piece, but it's already low on time. He has to make many good moves to make the draw, and to call that equal is simply a sin. Sorry for the long explanation, but it's
your explanation was so much better than mine, and of the game, and your point is well taken. So one other thing on these young phenoms, Jacob, because we got a lot to discuss, is you also highlighted in the book, you worked a bit with Pragananda's sister, who you mentioned you think is going to be one of the top woman players in the world. So what impressed you about, you might need to help me with the pronunciation, but Vaishali's game, Jacob?
I think she's grandmaster level already, and she was already this 3 years ago. So I worked with both Vaishali and Prague a number of times, and Murli and Aravind, and also I worked with Raunak. He came also to visit our house. And who else was in team? Adiban. Adiban's a good friend of ours also.
Team. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gukesh once came to a lecture I gave in Thailand and sat and said nothing. And then later we spoke very little, and he played some blitz with Christopher Yu in Reykjavik. So I have actually spoken to him, but I cannot say anything. And Nihal once was in a class at our academy, but he was like a guest solver and so on. But technically, I have been training all 5 of them at some point, but really not. Mainly Prague a bit, and Raunak a few days. But regarding Vaishali, I thought she was a fabulous player. She's a hard worker. She's a very serious person. At the same time, she had the kind of personality where things go wrong, she just continues. And she really, really likes chess. Really, really likes it. I think she's a very likely world champion. Wow. And although I think Gukesh and Abdussatorov are bigger talents, and they are all just talents now. There's nothing to say that Pragnananda cannot be the one who takes the big step forward.
Yeah, it feels like, they're all at such a high level, but it also feels like they're taking turns lately in the spotlight with just like, it's almost like one-upsmanship. Again, if you look at like from Gukesh's performance in the Olympiad to immediately Agassi wins this Abu Dhabi Open in really impressive fashion. Paco Vallejo tweeted that he's already one of the top 5 players in the world. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, but he's certainly moving in that direction.
Maybe he is. I'm not sure, but it's very obvious that India B would have won the Olympiad if Agassi had been there instead of Adiban, I think. Adiban played well, actually played really well, and he did well. But if they had Agassi to put in as well in the top, and Raunak was their reserve, like all of the Indian players played well. So, but it would just be a little more like Agassi on like say we put him on board 2, and you get Pragnananda down on board 4. What team is that? But it's actually possible that India decides to field a team entirely of juniors. I think Eric Gassi will turn 19 this year, so he will not be a junior. But kids who are now juniors, that will be their team in 2 years.
Yeah, amazing to think about. All right, well, we've got a lot of other topics to cover, so we're going to take a break, and we will be right back with Grandmaster Jacob Aagaard. Perpetual Chess is brought to you in part by Aimchess.com. Aimchess has an algorithm which reviews your games from the major chess playing sites and then gives you actionable information about what to work on. I haven't been playing as much Blitz lately, just been busy with family stuff. And when I review my games, it shows. My openings are still good, but I need to work on my tactics, my endgames, my advantage capitalization, and some other stuff. The good news is that Aimchess has the tools to help you work on those things. You can review the specific tactics that you missed within the game, among countless other features. So you can check out Aimchess for free, and then if you do decide to subscribe, use the code Perpetual30 to save 30% on the first month, or you can also use the link in the show description for aimchess.com. And we are back. And again, we're recording this on August 25th. This won't be out for a few weeks, but Jacob is the lucky person who is the first person I interview since we had some business news break in the chess world, which is that chess.com is acquiring the Play Magnus Group. Now, Jacob, again, I follow him on Facebook. He's been slightly more active on Twitter lately as well. So, and he's not one to shy from expressing his opinions, whether it be about politics or business or whatever it may be. So let's kick it over to you, Jacob. How did you react? What were your first thoughts when you heard this news that two of the biggest for-profit chess companies in the world are combining?
My first thought was it was sort of a bittersweet thing. On the one hand, I have been worried for a while about the Play Magnus Group's performance, because there's really a lot of good people who are relying on their income and their livelihood and so on from the success of this group. And I read their statement, the quarterly statement number 1 of 2022. And I also read parts of the recent one. And they seemed quite delusional in the sense of it was talking about an unexpected downturn in the market, which is like the end of the Queen's Gambit effect and the end of COVID. Like the idea that we were all going to be locked up forever, I don't see that as a business plan. So that sounded to me a little bit unrealistic. Also, their projections of growth to a revenue of 100 million in a few years, while most of their income streams were flatlining. Actually, the only thing that was increasing was sponsorship for their tour. So the sponsorship alone, if we had to say everything continues as it was at that point, would have to generate another 60 million, which was not going to happen. So I was worried about the soundness of the group, because there's really a lot of people in chess which have formed a livelihood around this. So on the one hand, it was for me quite a relief, even though I don't have a stake in this personally at all, and but it's a relief for me that a lot of good people will be fine. Some people will lose their jobs when there's a merger, but a lot of people will also be fine. On the other hand, I'm not sure it's healthy for the chess community to have such a dominant force. I would imagine it means less tournaments with prizes, because there's no incentive to compete with each other. I would imagine that it's sort of could be a little bit like Amazon has become, that if you shop online, you go to Amazon first, and if you can't find it there, you go elsewhere, which for maybe for our businesses could mean we could get a little bit squeezed. We're so small and peripheral that we're not their competitors, and I don't think I actually don't think it will really hurt us.
I should mention,
but
just to jump in for a second, I should have mentioned when I introduced you, the co-founder of Quality Chess Books is the specific business that Jacob is referring to.
Quality Chess and Killer Chess Training, which is an academy. We just call Quality Chess, but we do chess books, yes, and I think we do it quite well also.
As do I.
And I think that will be fine. And we're a sound company, and our academy is a sound company, and well, my hobby is playing guitars, and you've seen I have plenty. So because there's some, as I showed you some before we started. Like we're fine. We're going to be around, and we're going to keep doing our thing. And if we get a little squeeze, then we'll still be fine. So that on a personal level, it didn't really affect me so much, but maybe I think it can be bad for chess in general. And there were a lot of people who had this feeling. I also thought the way the video with Danny Rensch and Carlsen that he looked quite uncomfortable, Magnus. Like he's not used to losing, and it felt sort of like that was what had happened. But I hope they prove us wrong. That chess.com will turn this into something great that will benefit chess.
Yeah. I have a few things to add, Jacob, because first of all, I'm one of the Perpetual Chess is one of the businesses you mentioned. Obviously, Chessable and Aimchess are both under the Play Magnus umbrella and are significant sponsors. So it's possible the podcast could be impacted over the long term. But I again, like you, over the short term, certainly nothing changes. And I also saw all the mixed reactions online, but there's also there's great potential. I mean, first of all, obviously, the chess as a spectacle fans are certainly excited to see Magnus and Hikaru compete more often in sort of speed events. I also had the thought that to me, there's maybe more potential runway for even just a separate faction. Like, I mean, we've had the FIDE election recently, and there's the FIDE World Championship, but it seems almost like a new axis of power, albeit a corporate one. Do you think that there's any potential of like a separate actual tournament faction, Jacob?
I think it would be very dangerous for chess.com to start organizing world championships. There will certainly be quite a lot of people who rely on state sponsorships or federational support, or in other ways just feel that it's not for an organization, a private organization that's not democratic in any sense, to start organizing the World Championship. I know that in American sports, you like to call your national leagues for the World or the Universe League or whatever, the World Series, for example, which is a national league. But I think it would be a poor move from chess.com. And I don't think that FIDE is in competition with chess.com. I don't think chess.com is in competition with FIDE. I think if this great financial power that chess.com has at the moment, if that's sustained, then probably a cooperation with FIDE, which will be happy to be involved in great events and have their name on great events, since FIDE doesn't make a profit or try to make a profit, I think could also open for good things. But for sure, FIDE was in a stronger position when they had two competing partners to negotiate with.
Related to what we were just discussing, which is the World Championship cycle, we have a question from Patreon subscriber Igor Feinstein. Thanks for supporting Perpetual Chess, Igor. And you also have been outspoken about the World Championship cycle, both in our prior conversations and elsewhere. And Igor asks, he says, now that Magnus Carlsen has declined to defend his title, should FIDE at least consider instituting a new World Championship format that would be different from the traditional match? For example, one idea may be to have the player who performs best overall in 3 or 4 major tournaments become the champion, what would be the pros and cons of a system like that or something similar?
Yes, they should. However, I think you have to understand certain things, which is that the system, however you design it, should end in a match. Now, I would have certain requirements and considerations, which I all think are natural. First of all, we would want to have a system which allows players to qualify, so that there's no nepotism. There's no, what we see generally in the circuits at the moment is that players are invited based on, sometimes very spurious things. Like my very good friend Hans Niemann, he played in this tournament in Miami, and he did not perform well. Famously he talked about walking into the ocean and not coming back. And then from there on, it was downhill. But he had this one great moment where he beat Magnus and said, "My chess speaks for itself." And I think, some people thinking like this is interesting and so on. And then rapport drops out of the Singfield Cup and they invite Hans Niemann. And I think that's sort of a little bit based on, he's been improving and, this was interesting and we need a replacement because we're starting in a few days. And they invited Hans Niemann, although there were maybe other players they also could have. And normally these things are not on objective grounds. And I think chess is a worse sport than other sports. There are in the past players who have talked about being sidelined for various reasons. We remember that after Kasparov withdrew a touch move against Polka, and she was very upset about it, she was not invited back to Linares for years. After Ratibov won against Kasparov with black, he was also blacklisted. And there are many other cases in history of players who, for some reason, are not allowed to compete. Sometimes it's because they're not very nice people, and sometimes it's because not very nice people block their participation. One of the most famous examples is Alekhine asking for double fee always if Capablanca was also playing in the same tournament. So I think in chess we should have some objective with the World Championship. First of all, we should have it be exciting. We should have it be open for anyone based on merit. We should not have it governed by really past results, but by current results. So the rating spots simply have to go. Having many avenues to a qualification tournament sounds good. Having a qualification tournament where the players don't want to make draws is for me a very high objective, and the same with a match. So when we get to a match, we notice from any sport that you don't prepare for the final if you're at the quarterfinal stage or the last 16. It just doesn't make sense because you don't make it to the final if you're not focused on the next match. So I would create a system where you do have a match in the end, but the space between what would be a semifinal, which is what the candidates is at the moment, and the match is not long. Let's say 2 weeks, a physical recovery time. And then you have a match, and then you don't have 6 months preparation of how to make a draw against the opponent, which is really what we're suffering from now. Another thing I would avoid, this is following statistics once published by Peter Heine Nielsen, that in World Championship matches where the score was tied, which only happened from 2006 onwards, then whenever it was tied, the number of decisive games was 23%. And that has declined since. Now the last match, there was a more decisive games. But when the match is not tied, then we have a decisive game of 46%, according to Peter at that time. I simply believed him. It was my emotional experience the same, that whenever it's a tie, there is a risk aversion from both players, even though at some point there will be a decisive moment. It's rare we see someone taking a gamble in classical because they don't want to play rapid, which is what happened in 2010. Instead, we see people not taking gambles, which happened in 16 and 18. And we get these rather dead fish of a rapid playoff where it turned out one of them was much better at rapid than the other, and it wasn't very interesting. While people say that's exciting, I didn't think those finishes were actually very exciting, but we could have them first. This idea was floated first in 2012, having a prequel, decide who has the draws. You could have a 13 or 15 game match. One player gets more whites, but has to win the match. The match would never be tied, and it would end in a classical game. So for me, these things are logical and should be tried. And if they are not successful, then there's no problem reverting. In chess, we had the tournament format, we had the knockout format, and we reverted very easily. In other sports like soccer, for extra time, they had first the golden goal, then they had the silver goal, and then they scrapped it all and went back. This doesn't mean that going back is always the better thing. Basketball in the US never went back to two halves of 30 minutes or 20 minutes or however long it is, 20, I think. I'm not a big basket guy. They always stayed with the four session of, is it 12 minutes or?
Yeah, 12-minute quarters, yeah.
Yeah, and other improvements in other sports, people never went back. In soccer, which is a big sport outside US, until 1992, you could pass the ball back to the goalkeeper and he could take it up with the hands. And oh my God, the Danish team, they did that a lot. The Euro 1992. Peter Schmeichel had more possession than any other player in the tournament, with just holding the ball in his hand. And then it came back to him. And then it was immediately banned, and nobody ever looked back. And in the same way in chess, we might see that we want to counter what is happening on the engine front and the preparation front, without necessarily shuffling the pieces or having a different starting position or anything like that. And then the next step for me seems to be reduce the preparation time to a draw, reduce the incentive. In the candidates, they're always exciting. The players come playing to win. And then when they have to make draws or they don't care about the outcomes, most of them just continue to fight because that's how they prepared. We had a very bad candidates now, but generally they have been fantastic. So I think there are technical solutions, but hoping that the problems of previous matches will disappear by itself is not what I would go for.
Okay. I definitely like the idea of lessening the prep time. And yeah. I mean,
also, I would put the world champion earlier in the cycle, but it's clear that he also has to be present at some point. Now, the downside of this format, which is why you will find it very difficult for world champions, is that the prize fund to the winner will probably be reduced.
Yeah. Which already it wasn't, as it is, it wasn't enough to entice.
But if it's more exciting, it might be similar amount, but from a bigger slice.
Yeah. And it does seem like Magnus is pretty much on his own in terms of being unexcited by the World Championship. There are certainly others who agree with him or at least not opposed to him when it comes to format changes, but Ding and Nepo seem to have no hesitancy about playing in the World Championship. Fabiano, I think, would have been happy to get in based on what he said on interviews. So yeah, hopefully I like your ideas, and FIDE has at least suggested that they'll be polling players and possibly making changes. And again, traditionalists who are listening, I respect your opinions too. It's just, it's no one's ever going to be happy with, you can't please everyone.
I understand people who say that the candidates was very exciting when it was matches. It was, and so was the World Championship. But as we have seen, as computers grown stronger, the World Championship has actually become the less exciting part of the cycle. The Grand Prix was quite good this time, I thought. Other times, the previous one I didn't like. the World Cup was chaotic. There was some things I didn't like, but in general, it was a good tournament. I think the Grand Swiss was a good tournament. I think the candidates was actually quite tarnished by the Magnus Carlsen will he, won't he thing. And what we have as a result is we had the people who ended in second and third ended there because they didn't try to win the tournament. Ding, of course, wanted to win the tournament, but he lost the first round and then he made 6 draws. He was never within reach at all. And the reason sort of he came from behind and overtook Caruana and Nakamura was partly because he's a great player. Let's say from the starting point, Ding ending up in a match is not a bad thing at all. But if you look specifically on the way Caruana played against Duda and the way Nakamura played against Rajapov, you can see that these players, there's something in the back of the mind where they're trying to go for wins in positions where the chess doesn't add up. It's not sound chess. I was actually quite poor play, but it was some sort of desperation. Even if they maybe go to the game with the intention of let's just see what happens, happy with a draw, and then they're there and they cannot, the last hope feeling, and they both fell away to some extent based on that. If you know that there are two people who qualify, then Caruana with 5 or 7, he would. I don't think he wouldn't end second in that tournament. The only one who actually could challenge him was Nakamura because he beat him. So for me, this was quite sad. And Rajapov played for a draw in absolutely every game. And then people tried desperately to beat him, and he's still a strong player, and he ended up third, which is one of the most bizarre things of modern chess. But he really played for a draw all the time. So.
Yeah, that was the only thing that, obviously I talked to a lot of candidates leading up to it, and the only thing everyone agreed on was Rajapov will not win and maybe won't finish that high. But as you say, he ended up it
was sort of illustrating how bizarre the tournament was. It was a strange feeling. Like 2013 was maybe the greatest tournament of the 21st century. There was an immense amount of really interesting games. Even like there was a game between Gelfand and Ivanchuk, which I have some deep analysis on it. I never published it, but there was a book in French where it was included, where I saw some of these ideas, and it was an absolutely immense game. And it's just an unimportant game from this tournament, but the whole play between Aronian, Kramnik, and Carlsen, and of course ending with this great finish, it was the greatest tournament of the 21st century, I think. Then 2014, where Anand won, wasn't very exciting, and now this one here was just strange.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jacob, we gotta talk about your book. Moving. I think it's time. So let's take a quick break and then discuss Jacob's excellent new chess book. Try to get you all some chess improvement lessons from the quotes I have pulled. We'll be right back. Perpetual Chess is brought to you by our presenting chess education sponsors, Chessable.com. Chessable, of course, utilizes spaced repetition to help you remember opening sequences and tactical patterns, and they have a huge catalog of excellent courses, and they're dropping new ones at a blistering rate. New courses include one by Grandmaster Maurice Ashley. There's the new course Grind Like a Grandmaster by Magnus Carlsen himself with his friend Grandmaster David Howell. And The Life and Games of Mikhail Tal, which is an absolute classic book, is now on Chessable. And the video is done by Ginger GM himself, Simon Williams. So be sure to go to Chessable.com. They also have tons of stuff that you can check out for free. So Chessable.com, check out what's new. And we are back, and we are finally ready to discuss A Matter of Endgame Technique, an excellent book. As always, Jacob's books, there's a free preview available from the Quality Chess website. You can also get the book on Forward Chess. Jacob was kind enough to send me a copy of the book, but I knew for this one I was going to need the Forward Chess version, so I went and got that as well so that I could play through the moves in those moments when I don't have a chess set in front of me. And Jacob did tell me before I read it that even though the material is advanced, which it is, it's very readable, which it is. Jacob is a great writer, and there's lots of fun quotes both about chess improvement and kind of pulling from other walks of life as well. So Jacob, I mean, there was a lot to choose from, but I pulled a few quotes that I thought maybe you could expound upon. You ready?
Are you coming with the three little piggies?
I'm not. No, okay. I do not have the three little piggies flagged. I did flag some of the whimsical ones, but not that one. So one early in the book.
Can I ask you a few questions about the book first?
Yes,
because
let's do it.
I'm biased. Because whenever someone sells it, it reflects well on my private finances. So first of all, you read it on Forward Chess. It's very readable on Forward Chess, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Secondly, the physical format, because you actually have the physical book. How would you describe it beyond heavy? Quality chess books are always beautiful, but honestly, since you signed the book you sent me, I didn't want to mess it up once you signed it. So I didn't look I immediately decided basically I'm going to get this electronically. I want to keep this beautiful signed book in good condition. So I can't speak too much about what the physical book looks like. But you have seen how you can put it and it will lie open, stay open,
turn it open,
flat. Any page you can get it to keep flat.
Was that like a technical challenge as a publisher?
No,
but it does look great.
That is the quality of our books.
That's excellent.
So what happened with that is the binding of the books. We always thought they were fine, and then at 2015, my last round opponent in the Scottish Championship, he told me after the game, and I sort of didn't want to talk because I was watching the end of another game, and if Neil Barry would win, he would take the title from me, and if not, I would get it. And I was very engrossed. So I sort of didn't want to talk to him about it, and he wanted to chat, and I actually cared a lot about winning the championship of my country. So I hope that's acceptable. But he said to us, some of the pages fall out, and it's after some time, it's like, what? We never heard this. If you have problems with a book, you can always send it back to whoever you buy it from, and they will get a replacement from us. And it will be replaced. And then we sort of asked around, and people say, yeah, everyone knows. Sometimes, like 1 out of 10 or something, or 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 50, I don't remember what it said. But it said the pages can fall out after much use. Well, like, that's no good. Like, ideally, if people just buy another one, like, you wear out your headphones, you buy another headphones, they were good, but now they're done, now I need you. That would be great for the business. But reality is that people read a book and they don't buy it again. But when they go to buy another book, then it's sort of like, should I buy it? Well, the pages fall out. So we didn't know, and we care. It's not just that. We don't want to have people have a bad experience. So we upgraded to threaded binding around then, and we use it also in our paperbacks, I think. I'm really more the working on the screen than working with the paper. And since then, the physical quality has been quite better, I think. And now the hardbacks simply stay open, and they're really very nice. And we don't charge much more for the hardback. It's not like in other kind of publishing where people charge 2 or 3 times for the hardback than the paperback. But it really is a much superior physical product, and we don't really make much more money on it. So for me, this is like with this book that was so scary. 900 pages, where I could put them next to books from Thinkers, Everyman, and New in Chess, and I made little piles, and then one book which didn't need a pile, which was the Vacancy 2021 by Daniel Fernandez. I put all the books next to each other, and the 900 hardback was the same thickness as these 700 pages from the other publishers. Our paper is quite high quality, and it's really slick like that. So it's nice, little, compact, and only 2 kilos.
Yes, yeah, and you're not scared of intimidating your readers. At the beginning of the book, you say this is going to be a series, so they pick up this 880-page book or whatever it is, and the first
896, yes.
Yeah, first thing they see is, oh, don't worry, we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, it's true.
And I certainly felt that way reading it. I mean, I read it once and I could read it 3 more times, partially, of course, because I wanted to get ready for this interview. So I didn't go quite as slow as I would have if I was trying to maximize my meager chess skills. But nonetheless, I greatly enjoyed it. And we should say for newer listeners who aren't as familiar, Quality Chess has published so many of my favorite chess books. Under the Surface, Think Like a Super Grandmaster, Chess Tactics from Scratch, which we recently did a review podcast of, the Boris Gelfand books. I actually have never read the Yusupov books, but everyone loves them as well. Just an amazing array of books.
It's nice you mentioned so many books I wrote, because I'm the co-writer of the Gelfand books.
Right, yeah.
It's not a secret, but we haven't really promoted we had a book that was called Understanding Chess Tactics, and then we decided at some point we wanted to change the layout of it, because we changed our layout around 2007 2008, and we decided we want to reprint, but we'll change the layout. And then I came up with this idea, why don't we put some exercises in the end? And then also, I got the idea for this chapter. And we talked to Martin about it, and he said, no, I trust you. You can put some extra things in. So Understanding Chess Tactics from Scratch, I wrote half of it, the second half. The last chapter, where Ketty is solving some positions, which talks a little bit about calculation, and then there's 300 exercises I put in. The core of the book, what makes it great, is the first half. I just want to say this. Don't want to take credit for the book. The other half is sort of like it's just more material we thought would complement the first half of the book. But I just want to say thank you for the compliment. I'm feeling embarrassed here.
It's well deserved. Yeah, and I didn't even mention Thinking Inside the Box, which is one of my favorites. So,
thank you very much. And that one I did. You know the story about all the photos in it, right?
Refresh my memory if I don't.
I couldn't get myself to finish the book, so I made this. I made this trick on myself. I booked a book tour for it in Asia. So I went to all these Asian countries, 5 times in India, and then it was like really all over Asia: Hong Kong, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. I even went to Iran to go on the book tour, and we had T-shirts made and so on. But I didn't finish the book, so I went on a book tour without the book, and then we took all these great photos from the book tour. We put them in the book when I finally finished. So it's just. I think it in that way it encapsulates best my relationship to what I do, which is I do my best and I'm honest about it, and the same with this book here. Arguably, it's 5 or 6 books in one. You probably can confirm that chapter 1 stops at like page 307 or something like that, and that could have been a book, and from anyone else and any other time it would have been fine. The second chapter was what the book was supposed to be, which was like examples of people messing up in endgames and how we can learn from that in improving our technique. And then there's a chapter about fortresses, which I then realized should also have been a book. Then there's a chapter about rook versus bishop endings, which I sort of fell down a rabbit hole and got very interested in. And that could have been part of a fortresses book. So these two together is a book. Then there's a book on exchanges. And then there's a whole book of just some annotated games. And all 6 of them, 6 chapters, 5 books are in one book. And people ask me, why didn't you split it? And the thing is, I already did. There's another one coming, and it's even bigger.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Well, let's get to a few quotes from this one.
Okay.
So first up is, I will read what you wrote. A big part of chess is to play for a technical advantage. At the top level, the days of novelties leading to big advantages out of the opening are behind us. If you get any advantage out of the opening, it's cause for celebration. In my generation, there were lots of players who loved the opening more than anything else and dived deep, trying to win or draw straight from the opening. When I talk to these people today, they feel that chess is played out to some extent, and all that's left is to bluff. Chess changes throughout the ages, and in our age, technique is more important than it has been for a while. So if you have anything to add to that, again, having just talked to Fabiano, he definitely kind of echoed that sentiment. He described more of a sort of stick and move approach at the elite grandmaster level these days. So I think that's part of why that quote resonated with me.
Yeah, Peter Heine Nielsen said to me that he came to the recent conclusion that chess is incredibly interesting. The opening position has just been investigated too much.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. The other thing is with the speeding up of chess. You look like these young people who, when you talk about playing without increment and adjournments, like it sounds like you're something from the Middle Ages. I once tried to explain to Sabino Brunello why I actually don't like increment very much, because I think the players should be allowed to administrate their own time. If Grischuk wants to lose on time, this is his thing. On the other hand, if he wants to think very deeply and have 10 seconds left and find a series of great moves, we should not take this away from him, just to make life easier for the arbiter. And Sabino just looked at me like I was literally from the dinosaur age. And I was like, what? He said, I never played a game without increment.
Wow.
so it's just like, oh, okay. I think I lost the argument there. But because of increment, because of also the 1.5 hour, and then sometimes plus half an hour, and sometimes not, but just 30 seconds, we are now in a situation where you can less and less work things out by thinking. You cannot solve them so much on the board. You have to have more and more pre-existing knowledge later in the game, especially because you probably will not get an advantage earlier in the game. It does happen. People still want to fight. If you put a situation like opens, like we talked about the Abu Dhabi Open, which so many great games. If you put incentives in, people still want to fight, both players. But if one of the players don't want to fight, you can have a problem. More and more in chess. And then games have to be won over the long term and by very small thing and incrementally. And their good technical play is probably more important now than it used to be. But of course, it was always useful.
Yeah.
It's just, I just think this is where the level has sort of been pushed at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that topic, when I wrote a little bit to Patreon subscribers saying that I would be finally interviewing you, which I teased many times, I compared your book to Endgame Strategy. I consider it more advanced, obviously, more readable also, but more advanced. But yeah, it's in that vein, in that it's less about the technical end games and more about the strategy, and it is amazing to see how many mistakes you found, even from these top players. So I thought maybe you could explain a few concepts that come up in the book, just to give people a sort of preview where they can learn something chess-wise, even without a set in front of them. So
I hope I can.
I bet you can. Number one, the Steinitz rule. Could you?
Okay, so this is I learned this from Artur Yusupov. It's essentially don't make unnecessary pawn moves. The simplest way to say it is that when we think of the endgame, we have to remember that the main way to win the endgame is pawn promotion. The main way to win the middle game and the opening, or win in the middle game and opening, is through checkmate. Now, you can find pawn promotion winning in very, like move 6-7 in some games, and you can find checkmate in the endgame. But we're talking about predominant occurrences. And in the endgame, there are some features that don't exist in other phases of the game. Specifically, it's a stalemate and it's a zugzwang. So we do have early zugzwang positions. We do have crazy zugzwang positions. Sometimes, but it happens very rarely that we have them without many pieces on the board, and normally it's just like something the computer sends us. There's a famous Ivan Trugadam's game. There's a famous Nemtsovich game, and so on. But it's really, they're famous because they're so rare. But in the end game, often passing the move to the opponent is incredibly important. So the purest form of the end game, let's say the pawn ending, is so much dominated by zugzwang. We normally call it opposition because it's just the kings and they're across from each other, but it's zugzwang. It's forced to move, and if you can make this extra move with the pawn, then you often can create zugzwang in the other. That's one out of many reasons why you shouldn't make unnecessary pawn moves. So you shouldn't commit before you know you're committed to something you actually want.
Yeah. By the way, as an aside, the Fortress chapter was intense, Jacob. That was some impressive stuff. I could spend my life rereading that chapter alone. But some really cool examples.
The three little piggies, I tell you.
Yeah. Okay, now that you've teased it, first of all, you have to refresh my memory, and you should give our listeners the reference.
Okay, so for me, fortresses are not the way we usually use it in language, because my sole perspective is always, how do you play better? I'm a chess improvement person. I'm a trainer. I write books that are chess improvement books, and my focus is always, how do we play better? And one of the basic answers to that is we think in different ways. We recognize patterns we maybe even didn't know before, or by learning them, but that's what we call understanding, or we can improve our technical way of thinking, organizing our thoughts, and so on. So bringing us to the three little piggies, which seems a little bit beside this here. For me, a fortress is a strategy. It's not it's not necessarily, if it holds, it's a fortress. If it doesn't, it's not a fortress. I like to think of it as a strategy. We take the strategy of, rather than seeking any form of counterplay, we're just holding our ground. Now, if you try to have a whole board fortress, I call that a blockade. Happens very often in minor piece endings. If you try to just hold, like in a little corner, I call it the bunker. There's some fortresses which rely on counterplay and so on. But we can also put the fortresses in terms of quality. So there are fortresses that break very easily. And he huffed and he puffed, and the house of hay fell over. But he could have taken it down with a hose. He could have burned it down. It's just like whatever you want, just go straight through. You could just run into it. The fortress is a very pathetic attempt, and the little piggy had to run to his brother. And then we went to the house of wood. Now you can run into it and hit your head. You can put water on it. You can try all kind of huff and puff, and it didn't work. But if you set fire to it, it works. It burns down. And that's a fortress that only breaks in one way, and they are actually the predominant type of fortress. Then finally, you have the fortress made of brick, which is the fortress that just holds. Now, if you open the door, then you will get eaten. And as so it is if you make a mistake in a fortress position in chess. But with decent play or best play, a fortress that holds is, for me, the third one from the three little piggies.
Yeah, and lots of examples of grandmasters being in positions where they tried to do too much. They didn't just.
Sometimes, I think chess is just incredibly difficult, and sometimes some people didn't really understand these things, and they're very good at other things. Like there is no such thing as a grandmaster who is not good at chess. It doesn't happen. Maybe Muammar Gaddafi, but he died. So I do think it was a mistake for William Sinov to give him the Grandmaster title, but he did.
All right. One or two other nuggets to tease listeners with from the book. We've given them the Steinitz rule. What about the Shankland rule, Jacob?
Oh, now you put me in a spot. Okay, so we tease Sam with this a lot. So Sam wrote, he did a DVD series for iChess at some point, which is now part of, well, everyone's a part of the group now, yeah? But they were a Play Magnus company, and now they're a chess.com company soon. But he did this, the Shankland method, I think it was. And one of the things he explains in it is the Shankland rule, which could be reduced to, okay, this thing I want to do which isn't working, I should actually think about what happens if I do it anyway. Is there maybe something extra? Is there some surprise down the line? Is there some reason why this thing that positionally or in other way dynamically should work but has a problem? Is there something against it? And it sounds incredibly much like something I wrote about in Excelling at Chess, which was published, I think, a year before Sam started playing chess. And since I have been Sam's coach for over 9 years and explained a lot of these things to him, it sort of sounds like he put his name on something I had explained to him. And that's why we never forget to call it the Shankland rule. So we always remind him of it. I'm sorry. We are childish people, and we're still children inside, even if we're in grown-up bodies.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's a useful construct. Yeah. And
it is very useful. It's also very useful in chess sense. Otherwise, it would be on Twitter and not in the book.
And we have another question from a Patreon supporter relating to thinking inside the box, actually, Jacob, which is from Akko Hadari, who writes...
I know Akko, yeah.
Okay. He's a big fan of yours, and he writes, he's currently reading your great book, Thinking Inside the Box, and he says he remembers that you mentioned it's a must for everyone, and he's really enjoying it. So he's wondering if there are other books that you think it would be great for many players to read.
Well, if I say it's a must for everyone, that doesn't sound like me. I would probably say something like, if you only want to read one of my books, then Thinking Inside the Box is probably the one you should choose. I think it's my most comprehensive book, even if it's now not the longest. But are there other great books to read? There are so many. Well, I like the books I wrote with Boris a lot. Especially the first one, I think, came out really, really well. Positional decision making in chess. I think you mentioned Jan Marker's Under the Surface. I think that's an incredibly intelligent book. There's so many great books. You mentioned Think Like a Super Grandmaster by Mick Adams and Phil Hurtado, which is a wonderful book. A lot of our customers really enjoyed Chess Structures, a Grandmaster Guide.
How could I forget?
It's the sequel is coming.
Oh, is it? I interviewed.
It's like longer ago than the last volume of Game of Thrones. This one was written, but the sequel is now coming. It's the author is rewriting things, but he's essentially finished after 8 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed him like 3 years ago, and he mentioned he was working on another book then. So I've been wondering.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. He's not a chess professional, as I understand it. And I have to say, I typeset the book, but I had nothing to do with it. Besides that, I typeset it. It's Flos Rias is really, this is his thinking, and then John has edited it, and he always does really great work. So these are good books. I want to mention books. I read more books from other publishers. I'm just thinking about who I should elevate. I like Johan Helstein's books a lot. I also like Johan Helstein a lot, even though I haven't seen him for like 25 years or 20 years. But we were teammates in Sweden and knew each other as juniors, and so they're great books by a great man. Seven Deadly Chess Sins from Jonathan Rowson is a great book. There is a book called it's Yarmolinsky's book, The Road to
Chess Improvement.
Road to Chess Improvement, which I thought was quite a great book. It really influenced me at the time.
Okay, I'd say you've given us plenty.
That's the start. That's for middle game books. Game Changer by Matthew Sadler. I thought some of the book was not great, and some of the books was absolutely fantastic. And I think Matthew is maybe the greatest thinker we have, in the 21st century in chess, and people should always read his books. To mention someone current, not just if I don't mention not just Short Winning and even Sokolov, Magnus Carlsen's Chess Evolution, I would be fired. These are the two best books we published in 2021, and we're immensely proud of them.
Excellent. Yeah, so many good books. And we got one more question from Eiko, and then we got a few more topics if you're up for it, Jacob. So Eiko, and you mentioned in your newest book that you worked with Ali Reza in 2017, Ali Reza Firouzja, of course. And Eiko asks what you think Ali Reza needs to do to become the next world champion. Okay,
so I should say that Aako is from Iran originally. He lives now in the US. And he's really a wonderful human being. So yeah, I on the book tour, I had various stops. So I went in the last book stop. I went and stayed with Hamid Reza and Ali Reza in their house in Tehran, and we worked for a few days. I do not claim any credit for Ali Reza's great leaps in chess. I think first and foremost that always belongs to the player. Anyway, but anyway, I observed him and spent time with him, and it was an incredibly enjoyable time, and a very, very nice kid and very nice family. I think we saw that he's not as strong as his rating was in the candidates. I think first and foremost he needs to keep fighting at the top level. He's very good at having big fights. I think that's very important for a young player. He needs to analyze his games and needs to find out which types of mistakes he's making. He had problems with tension in the candidates. Now, if you check out the game Nepomniachtchi against Firouzja in a sharp Naidov, it was clear that Nepomniachtchi wasn't really prepared for this very sharp line, and we got some messy position. And at some point, White has a bishop on f1. There's a rook on h1, rook on d1. There's a bishop on c4, which is defended by a pawn on d5. It's around move 21, I think. And Ali Reza took on f1. And simply releasing the tension, bringing out the rook from h1 into the game without any actual benefit. And if he realizes that, and there were other games in the candidates where we saw these kind of things. So it's like I was in Charlotte at the time. I was giving a camp, and then went back to the room in the evening, and then looked at the candidates' games, and then some of them we looked at then the next day, and I explained things like tension and so on. Like I explained it one day, and then the next day I come with a game from the candidates, and here we have tension. Like you have to keep the tension. If you release the tension, you have to have some sort of reward, because often you are giving something when you're releasing. In this case, you're activating an opponent's rook. And the game was basically lost after this mistake. And what I think is the most important next step for Ali Reza is to sort of have a lot of these fighting games, lose some of them, win some of them, which he will do, and then get used to the level at top and analyze his games and make these kind of observations and improve gradually.
Makes sense. And we should remind listeners, we're recording this before the Sinquefield Cup starts, but it will be well underway, if not over, by the time this comes out. So whatever Ali Reza does there, we are not addressing that.
Yeah, the opening ceremony is a few hours away from where we are now.
So, Jacob, you mentioned Charlotte, and we've got one more Patreon question relating. Obviously, you've done lots of camps there. Friends of the pod, Peter Giannatos is always a star when he comes on Perpetual Chess. Shout out to Peter. But the question relates to your resurgent OTB career.
Well, I wouldn't call it a career. No. It cost me money to go there. That's not a career.
Yeah, and
no, they pay me something, but it's very expensive to come from Europe, and then there's a hotel, and I don't want to share a room because I'm old and grumpy, and then it just costs more for me to play than they actually can reimburse me. So I pay to play there, although not everything.
Yeah.
So it's not a career.
Yeah, I kid, but obviously it goes without saying that you in poor form is I would dream of being you in poor form when it comes to playing chess. But anyway, let's get to the question, which is from a longtime friend and supporter of the pod, Chris Wainscott, who says, Jacob,
hi, Chris.
Jacobs, please forgive me for comparing you with Dvoretsky, as it might make you blush. But Dvoretsky mentioned in his excellent autobiographical works for friends and colleagues that he felt it was important for trainers to play occasionally so as to not completely lose touch with what their students go through. Do you feel the same way? And did that factor into your decision to play in Charlotte a few times recently?
Yes, I do feel that way. I think playing is very useful. I think also learning something which you're not good at is very important. So I take guitar lessons, or did take guitar lessons. Now I'm going to try some self-learning in that going forward. And also I've taken many tennis lessons in my time. But I think it's important trying to be a student and always remember how it is to be a student. I think it's important to think without the computer running, because when the computer is running, then it's a very different experience. Everything becomes obvious. But no, that is not why I played in Charlotte or in Spain, where I also played twice. It was tournaments organized by friends. It was chances to go and hang out with friends and also spend a little time playing chess. And some people have said, why did you go and play when you just made short draws? And I will actually take a little bit of offense by that, because it's not true. Now, first of all, I'm European and I'm old. And we don't play double rounds.
Right.
We don't do double rounds. We especially don't do it for old people. I understand Americans have less holiday and it's a different reality. So that's the first thing. So when I am black and the opponent is happy with a quick draw in these close tournaments where I was the second oldest and then I was the oldest in the groups, I take them. And the first time I won 3 games with white, and 2 times with white I tried to do something, got in trouble, and then I held the draw. With neutralize, I realized I got in trouble quite early in the game. One game was like 28, 29 moves. The other game was like 22 moves, and I made the draws after getting into trouble. And then I won 3 games with white. And then I won 1 game with black, and I made 3 short draws with black. And for me, this is absolutely me singling out a lot of people that should play for win with white. Second time around with white, I absolutely played for a win, 3 out of the 4 white games. 2 of them I could have won. But the first one of it, I blundered a pawn in move 11. I then fought, got into a drawn rook ending. I held the draw, and then I made a move in 1 second, which is something I teach everyone not to do. which shows that when you get older, then things start to go wrong, and lost in one move. Just simply like lost a drawn position in one move. And my opponent had pressured me, and it was a long game, and this is actually a part of the technique. Like, he kept a little bit of thing. I had solved a lot of problems. It was draw, but I think physically I sort of lost concentration, and then I moved impulsively. I wasn't in control of my impulses, which is a teenage mistake for me. I didn't used to do that later, and okay, I lost the game, and I was a little bit disappointed, but all I can say is, like, no one cares really. but I made some quick draws with black. Two of them straight out of the box. One of them against Messier, where I got even, I think, a slightly more pleasant position. After 10, 11 moves, I offered him a draw, and then I was fighting in my white game. But then the last round, after I lost against Casacoli, my countryman to be, I thought, okay, this is enough. But I have to say, for the second tournament, that so many things happened between us, that yes to playing there, and actually it was time to go, that by the time I went there, I was not very in the right headspace to play. And if you're a grandmaster in a closed grandmaster event, you show up, and you just, I played my white games. I tried to play, but I owe it to the organizers and the other players to show up. People want to try to make a grandmaster norm. My job is to be there to try to prevent it, and I did my best, which on this occasion wasn't great. But I was tired. I was focusing on other things. There's really a lot happening in our private lives, which you probably want to break the news, because it's
well, you just hinted at it.
I just hinted at it.
When you say Casa Carli is your compatriot, you're not emigrating to the United States, though.
No, I'm not immigrating to the United States, but because Casa once won the B group in the Danish Championship and has Danish ancestry, and was at the time, although as a gap year living in Denmark, he did qualify to be Danish, and he chose to change so he could play in the Danish Championship. And I have since 2016 represented Scotland, but haven't actually played for Scotland. I played in the online Olympiad one time, but I haven't played in the national team. And I was very happy not to go last two times, when both times I realized it meant that Freddie Gordon would go instead of me, because he's by far the biggest talent Scottish chess has had since Jonathan Rowson. He's 11 now, and he plays fine. Unfortunately, in Chennai, he got COVID halfway through the tournament, but he was doing fine. And he's learning a lot from it. And we are emigrating. We're moving from Glasgow to Copenhagen in something like 36 days. So we just actually closed on renting a house this morning.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm sure that's a relief.
Yeah, well, there were some options, but since we already sold, it's nice to have a place to move to. But yeah, so we decided a long time ago I didn't necessarily want to get old in the UK. I felt socially and also structurally, the way things work here, that it would not be a great thing for me. I have kids. I'm divorced. I have kids through my first marriage, and they are now at the age where they can take a flight to Denmark, and actually would rather fly to Denmark for a week than come here every Wednesday and eat a bit, watch TV, and go to bed. Mm-hmm. So for them, it's actually an upgrade experience. I don't neglect my responsibilities as father, and the experience of COVID and post-COVID here in the UK and post-Brexit has not been pleasant. And it is in no way a criticism of the many great people, exclusively great people, that I've met in Scottish chess. I really, really have enjoyed being part of Scottish chess, and hopefully I will continue to be a part of Scottish chess. But I have decided that since I'm going to go and I'm going to live in Denmark, and it's probably where they're going to put me in a box one time and put me in the ground, that I'm also going to change back my nationality to the Danish flag. But I say emigrating. I'm not going home, because this is a weird thing. This is home, and I'm going to go and live in another country, and hopefully one day that will be home.
Okay. Well, we wish you continued luck with the move. I know it's a big change, big disruption. So I'm sure listeners want to know, Jacob, it's not affecting quality chess or killer chess training operations?
No. I know that people have heard scary stories from Bernie Sanders about universal healthcare and things like that. But I can promise you that the actual technical experience of life in Denmark will surpass Scotland quite a bit. So the internet has reached Denmark already, and it's actually of very high quality. I work from home already, so it's just going to be a different home.
Okay, and you'll still be able to teach your classes and so on. Anything we should say about killer chess training before we wrap up, Jacob?
Yeah, so we started with a little academy 2.5 years ago, and we started together with Ramesh, and we had some disagreement about how the academy should be and what was the spirit and intention of the academy. And it's sort of a shame that we didn't get this talked out in advance, but this is what can happen when one live in one country and one live in the other country, and we both have busy lives. But during the first summer of our academy, we came to the realization that we wanted very different things. And then we went a bit back and forward about who was going to continue the academy and so on. At some point, I suggested to Ramesh that we buy him out and that he go and do the academy he wanted, because the academy we had was not what he wanted and what he wanted the academy to be. And it was what I wanted, and especially what Kalja wanted. The academy is Kalja's much more than it is anyone else. She created it. She's the constant support. She is organizing everything. I'm a coach there, and I'm head coach. The third owner is Sam Shankland, who's also giving lots of classes. We have classes every day. Sometimes we have several classes. We now have grown a bit in the last 2 years. So we changed the name because we thought it was fair to Ramesh that there was no like he used to be a part of. So we changed the name. We went with Killer Chess Training because of what was available on the interweb, and all the coaches liked it better than the name we had already. We have a lot of good coaches. Continuously, we have Sam Shankland, we have Sabino Brunello, Julian Arismendi, Renier Castellanos. Then, probably forgetting someone. This is
Chaparinov, did you mention?
No, then we have occasional guys. So we have people who are very active players or doing other things who occasionally come. Mikhail Oleksenko we have is fairly continuous. A wonderful Ukrainian guy, grandmaster, very strong grandmaster. So we have occasional guys. We have Adams, Cheparinov, Ivan Sokolov, Alexander Motilev, Ivan Salgado, who do classes with us when they have time, which is not as frequent and not as continuous, and commitment is slightly less to the academy, which is fine. We are lovely to have them when they have time, and when they don't have time, the rest of us have to be available. We have lessons every day. The cost is somewhere like €764, which I think today is $764.
Basically, per year, we should say.
Per year. We have a monthly membership of $149. You can go in and review classes of active courses. So we have like courses. Normally they're like 10, 13 episodes. I'm currently doing Rook Endings, which is on number 27 or something like that, and is not finished. But you can, while they're ongoing, you can always review previous episodes. You can always see the classes from the last few weeks. And there is more material than anyone will be able to get through. We also have a weekly homework in 2 levels. We have friendly, which is sort of, it's not that friendly, but it's friendlier. And we have killer homework. We have people who are like 26, 2700 doing the killer homework. And we're basically from like 21, 2200. And the other homework is up to that level. Some of it is quite accessible. Some of it is more resistance, which the members send their solution to us, and we mark them and give them sort of suggestions of, maybe, like if it's a simple decision, so a positional decision, we maybe just like mark a few things, notice the weakness here, and this is the worst place piece, and this is the opponent's idea. And sometimes like that, sometimes something verbal, sometimes it's just explaining a tactical variation doesn't work because this is a refutation. So people have a chance to look again before we do the interactive live classes on a Tuesday, which again is also recorded. You can go to Chess Tempo afterwards, which is a fabulous website, which if people don't know Chess Tempo, they should check it out. Even though it's not a member of the big umbrella of everything else. But there we simply upload the course material so people can go through them. There they cannot be downloaded. We also do opening repertoires. Basically, we are providing a huge amount of service, more than anyone can digest. So you should pick and choose what's for you. And it's at one fee, and basically it gives people, I think, a really, really good experience. We have many happy members. We have many successful members. People making IM norms, IM title, GM norms, GM title, national championships, and people who win their local club championship, who win the weekenders, who improve from 1400 to 1800. Like it is not. It's a big tent. Everyone is welcome. So what we always say, if you want to spend time with nice people and get better at chess, you should check us out.
Excellent. Definitely nice people. Yeah. And listeners who heard Doug Eckert in the Master to IM episode, and friend of the pod, John Hartman, is a member. So you can always reach out to different people if you want to find out what it's like. And you guys give free brief previews as well, right, Jacob? If someone's interested,
you can go on the YouTube, and we have a number of videos. Or actually, if you just want to see how the live class works, just write to Kalya on our Facebook account. And most of the time, it's just very basic. But most of the times, you will, if you beg her for can I try a class, she will just send you a link. Ooh.
Excellent. And we should say Kalya is your business partner and life partner, and we will put the links to everything that you've mentioned in the show description. Well, Jacob, as always, super generous with your time. We had so much stuff to talk about. Is there anything that you're regretting that I didn't ask you?
Yeah, couldn't you have asked me sort of keep it short?
You should have asked me.
No, there's a story I want to tell. A girlfriend told me this. So the local organizer in Israel organized this rapid match between Gelfand and Schwittler. And after Svitler agreed to play, the organizer asked him if it would not be too much of a burden after the games. Do you think it would be possible to come and talk a little bit about them? As Svitler said, even if you try to stop me, you will not succeed.
Right.
So I'm a little bit the same. If you give me a microphone, I'm like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll say any nonsense, and then hopefully it will be edited afterwards.
No, not much editing going to happen. Listeners will enjoy every minute as I have. So
every hour,
every hour. Yes. So thanks as always. And I will catch you online, as can everyone listening.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who helps make Perpetual Chess possible. Big shout out to my producer, Matthew Passy. I'd also like to thank the Blue Wire Podcast Network, with whom we are proud to be affiliated. Be sure to follow us on social media, Beneficial1 on Twitter, at Perpetual Chess on Instagram, or you can join the Perpetual Chess Facebook group. You can email me, ben@perpetualchesspod.com. And of course, last but not least, I'd like to give major thanks to the Perpetual Chess Patreon and PayPal supporters. Those who choose to join that community based on their level of support can do things like submit questions for guests of the show, have access to live Zoom Q&A lectures with grandmasters who often have appeared on the show, going over chess games, answering questions, stuff like that. And you can even get access to ad-free Perpetual Chess if that's your preference. But most of all, thanks to everyone for listening, and we will catch you all on the next episode.